Let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a market corner you might not have thought much about, but, well, surprisingly active. High temperature wine sterilizers.
Huh. Yeah, it's pretty specific stuff.
It really is. And we've got this market forecast report we've been digging into. It shows this sector is, well, definitely on the rise globally.
Right.
So our mission in this deep dive is to get behind those numbers, understand the trends, and figure out what this growth in like sterilization tech might actually tell you about the wine world, how your favorite bottle gets from A to B.
And it's fascinating because it feels so niche, doesn't it? We're not talking the big bottling lines or oak barrels everyone knows. This is a very specific process. Yet the data, well, it shows pretty significant investment happening all over the world.
So what's the big picture then, like the top line figure?
Okay, so looking globally.
Yeah.
The report puts the market for this equipment at $164.4 million back in 2021.
Right, 164 million. And fast forward to now, 2025. Where are we roughly?
So for this year, 2025, the projection is around $196 million.
Okay.
And looking further out, the forecast for 2033, it's a pretty substantial jump to $278.7 million.
Wow, okay. That's definitely a clear upward trend. So what's pushing wineries to invest more in this kind of tech? For listeners maybe not deep into wine production, why use high-temp sterilization anyway?
Yeah, good question. It's primarily used to kill unwanted microorganisms.
Right.
Things like certain yeasts, maybe bacteria, stuff that can cause spoilage or make the wine unstable later on.
So it's about quality control. Consistency.
Exactly. Consistency, stability. It can be really crucial for wines that need a longer shelf life or, if they're being exported long distances where conditions might change.
Oh, okay.
Think of it as a way to sort of guarantee the wine reaches the consumer tasting how the winemaker wanted it to, preventing weird stuff happening in the bottle.
Makes sense. And the data suggests more people are seeing the need for that control.
Seems like it, yeah. That global increase points that way.
Okay, so that growth. From around 164 million to nearly 280 million over, 12 years? The report gives a compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of 4.5% for that. What did that number, 4.5%, really tell us? It's that fast? Slow?
Well, 4.5% CAGR over a decade. Look, it's not like some crazy tech startup boom.
Sure.
But for industrial equipment and in a sector like winemaking, which can be quite traditional, it's actually pretty healthy. It shows consistent, widespread adoption.
So solid evidence that this is becoming more standard practice.
Well, you'd say so, yeah. Globally.
But like you said, the report shows it's not happening quite the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Let's break down the regions. Where is the growth strongest? How about North America?
North America is showing a pretty solid performance. The market size there was $50.3 million in 2021.
Right.
Projected to hit about $59.6 million this year, 2025, and then expected to reach $83.3 million by 2033.
Right. So that gives North America a regional CAGR of 4.3%, just a tiny bit under the global average.
Pretty close.
And looking closer within that, the U.S. is the biggest slice, right? Started at $36.1 million, growing at 4% CAGR. Canada's smaller, but growing a bit faster. 4.9% CAGR.
That's right. But the real standout in North America, pace-wise, is actually Mexico.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It starts from a smaller base, obviously, but its market is projected to grow from $4.3 million in 2021 up to $8 million by 2033.
Wow. Okay, so
that gives it the highest CGR in North America, 5.3%.
5.3% in Mexico. That is faster than the U.S. and Canada. What do you think might be driving that specific acceleration?
Well, that kind of growth often signals, a rapidly developing industry sector or one that's modernizing fast.
Right.
Could be linked to more domestic demand for like consistent quality wine,
right.
Or maybe a growing focus on exports. Building that market often needs stricter quality control.
To meet international standards. Yeah.
Exactly. The numbers really point to a significant investment phase happening down there.
Huh. Fascinating. Okay, let's shift focus. Europe. The traditional heartland of wine. How's this market looking there?
Europe's still the largest regional market overall. It was $64.9 million back in 2021.
Yep.
Projected to hit $75.7 million this year, and then $102.9 million by 2033. So still growing.
But the growth rate?
But its regional CGR is a bit slower. It's 3.9%. So yeah, slower than North America and the global average.
And the report breaks down some key countries there. We see the UK at 3.5%, Germany 3.7%, France,
Yeah.
kind of surprisingly, a bit lower at 3.3%.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
Italy's 3.8%. Russia showing a bit stronger growth, 4.5%.
Exactly. So while the overall European pace is a bit more, let's say, measured, there are definitely hot spots. Spain, for instance.
Spain. What are the numbers there?
Spain shows a really robust 5.4% CGR. It's projected to grow its market from $5.6 million in 21 up to $10.4 million by 2033.
Wow, 5.4% in Spain. That really stands out compared to France or Italy, doesn't it?
It does, significantly faster.
Any thoughts on why Spain might be adopting this faster than some neighbors?
It's a great question the data throws up. Could be shifts in, Spanish winemaking practices, maybe larger scale production becoming more common.
Or maybe certain wine styles benefit more?
Possibly. Or maybe Spain's just particularly focused on boosting exports to markets where maybe sterilization is more of a requirement.
Yeah.
For entry or distribution.
Could be.
Yeah, lots of potential factors. And even smaller markets, like the report mentions Luxembourg, they're contributing too, showing growth pretty much in line with that European average.
Okay, so Europe's growing steadily, but it sounds like the most dynamic shifts are happening elsewhere. Where does the report point for the highest growth globally?
Oh, yeah. The report's really clear on this. The Asia-Pacific region is, well, it's the engine of growth for this market.
Asia-Pacific. Okay, let's look at those numbers. The region had, $31.6 million in sales in 2021, jumping to a projected $39.2 million in 2025, and then really surging to $60.5 million.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
In 2025. And then really surging to $60.5 million by 2033.
That's a steep curve, right? And it gives Asia-Pacific the highest regional KGR globally, 5.6%.
5.6%.
Okay.
And within that, who's leading the charge? China.
China's a major driver, absolutely. It's projected to grow its market from $11.3 million back in 2021 up to $24.1 million by 2033. That's a very strong 6.4% CAGR.
6.4% in China. That's huge. But hang on, here's where it gets really interesting. India. The report shows an even higher KGR there.
That's right. India's growth rate is outstanding, from $3.2 million in 2021.
Tiny base, relatively speaking.
Tiny base, yes, but projected to reach $6.9 million by 2033. That represents a 6.7% CAGR.
6.7%. In India, that's the highest individual country growth rate in the whole report, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The highest one highlighted. And you're right, India isn't, a traditional winemaking giant like France or Italy.
Not at all.
So that pace, 6.7%, it suggests a really rapid transformation happening in the Indian wine scene.
What could be driving that?
Could be a whole mix of things. A burgeoning domestic market, perhaps, increasing production scale really quickly, or maybe trying to establish a foothold in international markets that demand that kind of consistent quality.
All right, needing the tech to compete.
Precisely. And China's 6.4% tells a similar story, rapid modernization, scaling up production.
And the report mentions others in the region, too.
Yeah, it notes solid growth in places like Japan, 4.5%, South Korea, 4.9%, Australia, 4.7%, and across Southeast Asia collectively as well, 5.2%. They all add to this very dynamic regional picture.
Okay, so Asia-Pacific is clearly where the fastest growth is happening. We've covered the major regions.
Yeah.
What about Latin America and the Middle East and Africa? Are they also part of this global trend, investing more in sterilization?
Oh, absolutely. They're definitely reflecting the trend, adding to the overall global growth, often from smaller starting points, like you saw with India.
Right.
In Latin America, Brazil really stands out. Its market for this equipment, projected to grow from $5 million in 2021 to $9.7 million by 2033. That's a robust 5.7% CAGR.
5.7% in Brazil. That's up there with the Asia-Pacific leaders, base-wise.
Yeah.
Higher than the global average.
It is, yeah.
Same drivers likely at play there. Market development, scaling up, export focus.
You'd have to assume so. It points to the same kind of factors we talked about for Mexico or India, just rapid development and investment in quality and consistency tech.
And the report mentions others in LATAM.
Argentina's noted at 4.7% CAGR, Colombia at 5.5%, Peru a bit slower at 3.9%, and Chile also shows strong growth, 5.3% CAGR, nearly doubling its market size, actually, from about $0.8 million to $1.5 million.
Okay, lots happening there, too. And finally, just briefly, the Middle East and Africa markets mentioned.
Yeah, the report just highlights growth in Egypt, that's at a 4.2% CAGR, and Turkey at 4.7%. The kind of collective rest of the Middle East is growing, but more slowly, around 3.1%.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together then, this
Yeah.
deep dive into high-temperature wine sterilizers.
Mm,
It really revealed a pretty clear and widespread trend, doesn't it?
it does.
The global wine industry is significantly upping its investment in technology specifically aimed at microbial stability. Consistency.
Correct. The global market's growing steadily. That 4.5% annually shows that. And while the traditional European markets are growing too, the real dynamism, the faster adoption rates, that's happening in regions like Asia-Pacific, especially India and China, and in specific countries like Spain, Brazil, Mexico, Chile.
Right. Those are the places where the numbers suggest the most rapid changes are happening in production practices related to quality control, stability, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So for you, the listener, whether you're just a wine enthusiast or maybe you work somewhere in the industry, this surge in demand for sterilization tech, it implies something, right? It implies that the wine being produced globally, especially in these really high-growth regions we've talked about, is increasingly likely to have gone through processes designed for maximum stability, maximum consistency.
Yeah. It impacts everything from shelf life, predictability, the wine you actually pour into your glass.
It suggests a global move towards standards that really prioritize preventing spoilage, making sure that wine tastes the same, bottle after bottle, shipment after shipment.
That seems to be the direction, yeah.
Okay, so this data gives us a clear picture of where this is happening most aggressively. But here's maybe the provocative thought to leave you with, kind of building on the report's numbers.
Okay.
What are the specific underlying forces, things maybe not spelled out in the market data itself, that are compelling winemakers in places like India or China or Spain or Brazil to invest so heavily and so much faster in this high-temp sterilization compared to producers in, say, France or the UK? Is it mainly about breaking into demanding new export markets? Is it meeting rapidly changing domestic consumer tastes? Or does it reflect some kind of fundamental shift towards bigger industrial-scale production models globally?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What's really behind the push in those specific places?
It's definitely a trend worth mulling over, maybe the next time you open a bottle.
Okay, so think about that bottle of wine, maybe sitting on a store shelf near you. It might have come from, thousands of miles away. How did it actually get there safely without spoiling?
Yeah, that's the question.
Today, we're kind of lifting the lid on a really critical piece of technology, mostly behind the scenes, that makes all that global wine trade even possible. We're doing a deep dive into the market for high-temperature wine sterilizers.
That's right. And we've been looking at market insights, specifically drawing from analysis by cognitive market research, really trying to understand the forces shaping this specific niche.
And our mission here really is to pull out the crucial bits from this source material. We want to help you quickly get a handle on what's driving things, what's holding things back, and what's changing this very specific, but incredibly important part of the wine industry.
It's really about understanding the tech backbone. The stuff that supports wine's journey across the globe, making sure the quality and safety hold up over huge distances, different conditions. It's just crucial for a global market.
Okay, so let's jump right in. What does the source material say are the main things pushing this market forward? What are the big drivers?
Well, what's really interesting is how directly it ties into globalization. The primary driver highlighted is this growing need for wines that are genuinely export ready, shelf stable.
Right.
As wineries try to sell further afield, globally they're facing, much more varied storage conditions and just the sheer challenge of shipping things long distances.
Makes sense.
So high temperature sterilization, it almost becomes, non-negotiable if you want to significantly extend that shelf life and keep things microbiologically stable, basically stopping spoilage from unwanted microbes over time and distance.
So it's not just about making good wine, it's making good wine that can actually survive the trip, like across continents.
Exactly. And then, tied into that, there's the whole global trend towards stricter standards. Hygiene, product safety.
Okay. Regulations.
Yeah, regulatory bodies all over the world are tightening up. They're demanding wineries use really stringent sterilization to prevent contamination, spoilage. And the source points out that these high-temp systems, They're seen as a reliable, effective way for producers to consistently meet these tougher rules, which is, critical for consumer trust, safety.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, nobody wants to open a bottle and find it's, well, gone bad. Or worse.
Right. And then there's another kind of interesting driver. It's about shifts in where wine's being made globally.
Ooh.
The source highlights this significant increase in wine production coming out of developing regions. It specifically mentions places like China, India, South Africa.
Okay.
So as these countries ramp up their production and they want to compete internationally, they're investing pretty heavily in modern winemaking tech, and that includes these high-temperature sterilization systems, to meet global standards.
I see.
So this growth in new production areas is creating quite a bit of demand.
Okay, so the big picture drivers are global trade needs.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
So the big picture drivers are global trade needs, tougher safety rules everywhere, and new big players getting into the wine game. That sounds like a powerful mix.
It is.
But like any market, there have got to be hurdles, right?
Sure.
What does the source say are the main restraints holding things back a bit?
Well, yeah, the research points to a few pretty significant challenges that, temper the growth. One of the biggest ones is the energy use. These systems consume a substantial amount of energy, and that means high operating costs. Keeping those temperatures up takes a lot of power, which translates directly into higher bills for the wineries.
Yeah, I can definitely see how the electricity bill could add up fast.
Absolutely. And it's not just the running costs. The initial investment, buying the equipment itself, that's another major restraint.
Right, the upfront cost.
These aren't simple machines. They're sophisticated systems, big financial outlay needed. Plus, they often need quite a bit of dedicated space in the facility, which is another practical problem for wineries, maybe ones with older buildings or just limited room to expand.
Okay, so cost buying it and running it and just finding the physical space, those are real practical issues. But isn't there also a challenge that gets right to the heart of winemaking itself? Something about the wine?
Yes, and this one raises maybe the most sensitive point, especially for, traditional winemakers. A really critical restraint is the potential impact of that high heat on the wine's flavor and aroma.
Ah, okay.
Wine is, it's delicate, right? It's this complex balance of compounds. And traditional winemakers, they put huge value on preserving those natural nuances. So there's this very real worry that if the high temp treatment isn't done right or it's too much, it could subtly or maybe even significantly change those delicate sensory qualities, impacting the wine's character, how people perceive it.
The whole worry about sacrificing the art for the science, maybe cooking the unique personality out of the wine, that feels like a huge tension, especially in an industry built on craft and taste.
It's definitely a key balancing act the industry is grappling with. But, despite these restraints, the market isn't just sitting still. It's actually being reshaped by some really interesting tech trends that the source highlights.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. How is the technology itself changing to kind of navigate these challenges but still meet the demands? What are the big trends?
Well, one major trend is a definite shift towards things like pasteurization and much more precise heating methods.
Not pasteurization.
Yeah, so modern systems are increasingly moving away from long heat exposure. Instead, they use brief, targeted bursts of high temperature. The goal is to effectively kill the unwanted microbes, but with minimal contact time.
Oh.
It's specifically designed to reduce that potential for messing with the sensory stuff we just talked about. And it also helps boost throughput, get more wine processed faster.
So it's about being really surgical with the heat, quick, precise, get the job done without sort of lingering and potentially damaging the wine's character.
Exactly. And another big trend is the deep integration with smart control and monitoring systems.
Ah, the smart factory idea.
Kind of, yeah. Bringing it into sterilization. Digitally controlled sterilizers are really changing quality control, traceability. These systems, they offer real-time temperature tracking through the whole process. They allow for automation, and they generate these comprehensive digital records for every single batch.
Wow.
It gives wineries unprecedented control, improves consistency, and provides really valuable data for analysis for compliance.
Yeah, real-time data and automation and sterilization. I bet that makes things like compliance checks and just ensuring batch-to-batch consistency way easier and more reliable.
It offers a level of precision that was, pretty hard to get before. And then lastly, there's a really strong emphasis now on sustainability, incorporating energy recovery solutions.
Okay, saving energy.
Exactly. Newer models of these high-temp sterilizers are being designed with much better insulation and systems that can actually recover and reuse waste heat. Yeah, and this fits right in with the broader industry push globally to cut energy use, lower carbon footprints. It reflects this growing environmental awareness in the wine sector, too.
Okay, so the trends seem to be all about getting smarter, getting more precise, and getting more efficient. It really feels like the technology is directly tackling those restraints we talked about, the cost stuff, through efficiency and energy recovery and the flavor impact concerns, through precision and flash pasteurization, while still meeting those big drivers of safety and being able to scale up for global markets.
That's a really good summary. The technology is evolving fast, trying to meet these complex demands, global trade, safety rules, while actively trying to mitigate the traditional downsides, like the high costs and that potential impact on the wine's actual, unique profile.
So just pulling together what the source material is telling us, this high-temperature wine sterilizer market, it's clearly being pushed forward by, well, the needs of global trade and tighter safety rules, but it faces real challenges around cost buying and running these things, and that fundamental concern about preserving the wine's delicate nature.
The balancing act.
Yeah. But the future, according to the research anyway, seems to be shaped by technology getting smarter, more precise, and more sustainable in how it works.
It's a fascinating little snapshot, isn't it? How a traditional industry like wine is navigating all these pressures at once: globalization, regulations, fast tech changes.
And understanding these dynamics, it's really key for anyone involved in, say, the business side of wine, or maybe interested in global trade logistics, or even just curious about how technology impacts these really time-honored crafts like winemaking. It shows you that hidden infrastructure that gets that bottle to you from halfway around the world.
Absolutely. It's easy to forget that part.
Which kind of leaves us with something to think about as we wrap up here. We've talked about this complex balancing act, right? Using sophisticated tech, but needing to preserve traditional things like flavor, all while facing more pressure to be sustainable. How might these exact same forces, these same trends and pressures play out in other food and beverage industries? The ones that also rely on preserving delicate natural products for global markets.
That's a great question to ponder. How does this translate?
Something to chew on.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai